Hello, brethren. Tonight's episode will be part 2 of Who is UPA7.org and Universal Publishing Association on YouTube. We're going to go into more of what we left off with. Last post we did was about a month ago, and we did get some feedback from some brethren asking when we were going to be putting up part 2, and so we didn't want to delay this much further. 1 month ago, like we said, we did part 1, and now we're going to get into part 2. We have prayed, and we ask that you do the same, as we always faithfully ask our listeners to kneel down and ask the Lord for the promise that he made in John 16:13, that he will send the Spirit of truth to guide us into all truth. With this guide, we are assured of being guided into what is truth and not what is error. So go ahead and do that, and once you do that, continue with the video. Thank you. Okay, so we want to start this out with a purposeful reminder. Our goal is not to condemn, but to warn. Should those following an unauthorized rod organization be awakened to the fact that their organization, which they have been supporting, is found to be teaching contrary to the rod, then we pray this video series will lead them back to the plain, clear teachings of the rod and follow its counsel. We want nothing more than to have organizations like UPA 7 and their followers come back to the DSDA fold. The divisiveness and false ideas shown throughout the years by them, although wrong, would be as when the parable of the prodigal son lesson shows forgiveness and embracing. Should they redirect their efforts into God's plan or organizational work now going on in the direction of the eastward course of Ezekiel 47's prophetic river, great blessings would follow. So we do this in that spirit, brother, that we want to do this as a help, not a condemnation of certain people or organizations. We want to let everyone know that the Lord is willing and able to get us all back in line to his truth. All right, so the questions we're going to look at today is number 2, is the leader Eric Edstrom teaching one thing and practicing another? How can hypocrisy be acceptable today? Well, we dealt with that already in part 1, in that when you teach that the importance of the Ezekiel 47 river is how you know the storehouse and the headquarters, and then you do opposite of that, well, that's nothing more than hypocrisy. So we've dealt with that, but there is more that we can deal with, but we'll do that maybe in a future presentation. Number 3, is it true that what UPA 7 org teaches, that individuals can be the storehouse, keeping the tithes and dispensing them as they fit a rod teaching? So this is particularly the area that we're going to focus on this presentation today. All right, before we start, it's always important, as we've done in other videos, to see what the brother or sister had to say. Before we go into anything, we want to show you the evidence, what they've done, what they've said, so you can hear it for yourself, that we're not just making things up or misquoting them or whatever. We want to make sure that you understand this is coming directly from them. So we've taken a part of the brief historical timeline of the S-Rod that's produced by Universal Publishing Association, that's UPA's official YouTube site, and you'll hear for yourself how they go into the understanding that we're going to talk about the storehouses and the tithes and so forth. We're going to probably stop it as we go along to make comments. So let's get started.
Your car or your garage. Return your tithes to God's true storehouses, not some man-controlled associations. You'll be held accountable to God for this. And for those that would rise up and object, oh, well, your home is not to be a storehouse. Excuse me. This is completely naive and ignorant of our history. Do you not know that in the period of the scattering time, after Brother Haddock died, When Faithful Davidians reorganized in 1961 to publish the original Shepherd's Rod on through the 1970s and 80s.
Okay, we're going to stop right here, brethren. So what the Eric Edstrom is saying here is that when people say that your home cannot be the storehouse, well, he's showing his history where actually private homes were used as the storehouse and headquarters. Well, that's understandable because at that time the brethren were mere fishermen, as it were, very poor, not a lot of money amongst them, and they could only afford what they could afford as a group. Remember, they just come out of the knockout blow, so everything was disintegrated. Okay, the whole organization was just thrown down by Sister Hott's false prophecy of 1959. So they had to regroup. They were basically very poor. They didn't have much money, and they did what they had to do. And yes, in 1961, in the house, I believe in Arlington, California, where they first regrouped, there was the private home. I believe it was Brother Warden home, but I'm not for sure, but I think that was. And then they used that as the temporary locations, the headquarters, more or less. But keep in mind, and what he fails to tell us, is that these private homes were the homes of the organization. Nobody was out on their own using their private home as individuals. It was still all the way through, like he said, into the 80s, there were private homes used. Well, let's correct that. In 70s, as we show in other videos, the storehouse was transferred to Salem right here in 1970. So here's really a moot point what he's talking about from 70 on, because if you follow the Ezekiel River, you'll know that this is where the storehouse from God located. So it didn't really matter what the other brethren were doing, homes or not, So, but anyway, the point being that he misconstrues the idea. The idea is we're not saying and talking about specific homes. We're talking about organizations as a group versus independent people. Home or no home. Independent people is what the issue is about.
That almost all of this publishing work, these storehouses, were done out of private homes and garages. Wake up. Okay? It's not that the home makes a storehouse. It's the publication of the Shepherd's Rod literature, regardless of where it's done, whether it's a cave, a garage, or your bedroom. So stop focusing on peripherals and vain justifications to support greedy dog ministers who eat up the vineyard and take all the...
Okay, let's hold it right there. Now we're going to go into more of this as we go into the presentation, but notice what Brother Edstrom is doing. He's saying that you support these organizations and you're making certain ministers, the paid ministers of the organizations, greedy dogs and enriching them. Okay, this is not the truth. We have firsthand knowledge, and many other brethren in the Davidian work know, and I'm talking specifically about Mountaindale and Waco. Those are the two that we, as shown in videos, are what we call two legitimate storehouses and not headquarters, but the work offices. Mountaindale being the headquarters and Waco being a division of that, and so therefore it's legal as a legitimate God-authorized organization. But what we see is that this idea that we're enriching them, and they're fat, high off the hog leaders just sucking the money and having nice homes and nice cars and all that, is the furthest thing from the truth. Like I said, we'll get more into this, but this is a flat out lie, okay? We're not making them rich. We're not making them fat and satisfied and greedy and all these things. This is false. So we just wanted to call that out.
Tithes to enrich themselves and leave the poor flock starved, failing to train people to be leaders, only accepting and training followers. This is ridiculous. So yes, you can start a storehouse. And if you publish the original Shepherd's Rod, then you're qualified to accept tithe.
Okay, did you hear that, brother?
This question, how...
Did you hear that, brother? And he just said if you publish the original Shepherd's Rod message, you are qualified to receive tithes. Okay, so we're going to go into all these different points that he brings out in his presentations. All right, let's look at the main declarations from UPA 7. Operate independently. Return your tithes to God's, quote, true storehouses, private homes, and not man-controlled associations. Number 3, private homes can be the storehouse as seen from Davidian SDA history. And we already went over that it wasn't the point that the homes were the storehouse. It was that was representing the organization. They were using that as organizational offices, not individual, private, independent people in their own individual houses. That's what he didn't understand in that. Number 4, if you support current associations such as Mountaindale and Waco, you're enriching greedy dog ministers. Number 5, if you publish the original shepherd's rod, then you are qualified to accept tithes. Now, you notice we enlarged that because this is the key. What we believe is what's making UPA 7 an organization that will be held accountable because of number 5. They are teaching something, brethren, that will be very, very serious and found wanting in that day. So we have to go into number 5 very closely. All right, so we have this here that we want to look at. But before we do that, I want to continue on here. I think we're going to go into some of the points that he goes into on those points that he just made in his presentation. Number 1, operate independently. Now, we got some quotes here to show you what the message really teaches. And the spirit prophecy and the rod, we know, is the message of the rod. So in the spirit prophecy, it says, the record declares, neither was there any among them that lacked. And it tells how the need was filled. Those among the believers who had money and possessions cheerfully sacrificed them to meet the emergency, selling their houses or their lands. They brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. And distribution was made unto every man according to as he needed. You notice that? This is the very beginning of the Christian era of tithes and what to do with the Lord's money. Do you see that the apostles did not rebuke them and say, no, go back to home and use your money as you see fit. And I'm sure you can spread the gospel with that money and bring in as many as you can. And I'm sure the Lord will be with you and just do the best you can and the Lord will be at your side. No, brother. The apostles were accepting it because they knew that the Lord had a structure, had organizational structure. And it started from the very beginning with the apostles. And then we go down further to Acts of the Apostles, page 16. It was at the ordination of the 12 that the first step was taken in the organization of the church that after Christ's departure was to carry on his work on the earth. So we see once again that organization is very key in the Christian era. In fact, it's even key in the Old Testament era, but particularly in the New Testament era. All right, we see more. The Jewish church in which reposed the truth up to the time of Christ was ever to be the storehouse, and the priests were ever to be its stewards. So once again, we see a truthism here, that there's not, in the Old Testament, the Jewish church, there wasn't individuals out there doing what they thought was best and, praying that the Lord would be with them. No. It was a structure. It was a organizational structure. And who were the stewards? The priests. Certain individuals were to watch over that money, just like it's supposed to be today. As our numbers increased, it was evident that without some form of organization, there would be great confusion, and the work would not be carried forward successfully. To provide for the support of the ministry, for carrying the work in new fields, for protecting both the churches and the ministry from unworthy members, for holding church property, for the publication of the truth through the press, and for many other objects, organization was indispensable. We had a hard struggle in establishing organization, notwithstanding that the Lord gave testimony after testimony upon this point. Isn't that amazing, brethren? So the spirit of prophecy, prophetess Ellen White, was telling us that she continued to get testimony after testimony. Yes, organize, 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 organize. Upon this point, how important it was. The opposition. Now, these are the people that say, no, 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 we don't want our position. No, 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 we want to be independent. Don't bother us with your groups and your organizations and associations. No, no, no. The opposition was strong, just like it is today. You see, the devil doesn't change his tactics. He uses opposition all down through the time. He just changes horses, changes people. And it had to be met again and again. But we knew that the Lord God of Israel was leading us and guiding us by his providence. We engaged in the work of organization, and marked prosperity attended this advanced movement. See, anytime that the brothers come into unity, as much as possible, there can only be blessings, brother. Not independent atoms all over the world answering to no one. Okay? This is not how the Lord works with his message, with his truth. And this is proven by our history. All right. Those who teach independence is the best way. Please read this. We put this one out there because this is powerful. All the efforts made to establish order are considered dangerous, a restriction of rightful liberty, and hence are feared as popery. These devoted souls consider it a virtue to boast of their freedom, to think and act independently. They will not take any man's say-so. They are amenable to no man. I was shown that it is Satan's special work to lead men to feel that it is God's order for them to what? Strike out for themselves and choose their own course independent of the brethren. Okay, brethren, this is powerful. Testimonies, to ministers, page 29. You see, whose work is this? Is this God's? No. According to inspiration, it's the arch enemy's work. Those that are doing this and saying, no, 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 no organization, no association, no, I want to be independent because they're doing this and that and this and the other thing. Therefore, we've got to go because God will be all with independence all around the world. It's false, brethren. We see, no matter what the justification is, yes, there's mistakes. Yes, there's not right doing in all the ins and outs of the organization and associations. That is admitted. But does that give us right to strike out and be independent? You'll see further what the message tells us. Okay, let's step back for a second and ask, why are we going into this so much? Well, because the Lord is faithful. The Lord wants to give you and me a great blessing. Do we want to cancel that out? Do we want to say, no, Lord, I don't need the blessing. I'm doing okay. No, no, no. From personal testimony, and you can listen to my tithe videos where I give my personal testimony. I am experiencing this Malachi 3:10 promise. Okay, I am getting large blessings through my independent business that I have and have had for 28 years. Okay, it just cruised along until the first 20 years or so. It did okay, but boy, it expounded once I started returning about 10 years ago the tithes to the storehouse the Lord led me to understand. And this is what we want everyone to experience. It's a blessing that you will get from Malachi 3:10 if you do the right thing, if you take it upon yourself, serious study to find out more about the tithes. Where is the tithe? Look at the Davidian history. And we have all the videos that will help you in this regard. And you'll find the path that the Lord has clearly charted out for us. So we have to keep focused. This is why we're doing the presentation and going into this issue particularly. Amen. All right, so again, he says, return your tithes to God's true stores and not man-controlled associations. Private homes can be God's storehouses. Well, in the Lord's infinite wisdom, he had a brother send in this question, and the prophet knew that it must be addressed, and he addressed it clearly. Cannot my home be the storehouse? There's the question that we need to answer. And that's found in question 97, answer 4, page 44 and 45. Is it scriptural for one to retain and personally use his tithe and offerings in order to carry on the gospel work in his own community? According to what? His own plans. Okay, so this questionnaire had ideas that I've got some really good plans. I understand the Lord's work. I understand what needs to be done. I get it all. So can I be the storehouse? Well, what did the prophets say? Nowhere in the scriptures do we find permission to use the Lord's money at what? Our own discretion. Do you see that, brethren? We don't have the right to use it at our own discretion. It's understood if you study like the Lord will guide you into all truth, John 16:13, where the storehouse is and who it belongs to and where you have to return it, you no longer have any ideas of own discretion, right? The only justification for so doing would be the sheer inability for some to send it to the Lord's storehouse. Should one voluntarily, though, engage in such a practice, then he would set the wrong example before others. Perfect example, brethren. UPA is setting the wrong example before others. Let's see what happens further. And if following in his lead, others assume the same right, their course must be inevitably result in seriously handicapping the Lord's work, bleeding and subverting his treasury, and thus disorganizing his work and reducing the church to a mere shell, while her members are hiring themselves as laborers in the Lord's vineyard, helping themselves to the Lord's money, and running without having been sent. What a Babylon that would be. You see, if Mount Carmel and Waco, Mountaindale and Waco decide, you know what, I've had it. Too much trouble. Let's all independently go and do our own thing. We would turn into a Babylon, brethren. So many people would be doing this. Another brother would be doing that, teaching something else, and we would be all messed up. This is what the Lord's final Elijah message warns us. Don't do that. Okay, if you support current associations such as Mountaindale Waco, you're enriching greedy dog ministers. Submit to us any evidence that any paid minister from Mountaindale Waco is living the high life. Fancy cars, fancy homes, etc. From our experience, they are not wealthy at all and live and work in average and even poor conditions. This is not a true statement and is pure deception, brethren. So, he's trying to paint the picture of greedy dog ministers, taking your tithes and, having all the nice cars and the homes, and forget about the people out there. They can get the material later when that's not true, brethren. It's false. And I will tell you another thing. Just recently, just to give you an example, we heard from one of the leaders at Mountaindale. They're experiencing a big storm, and he was saying that he had to live there for a few weeks to get some things accomplished. And he's inside a home that's the heating's gone out. So he's shivering. And he's they don't even have that enough money, I guess, or whatever to fix the heating. It's a very big project to fix. So they have a lot of finances, a lot of things are taken care of at the best they can. But to put the picture out that they're sitting there on this big low sofa with all this money and they're just relaxing, watching their favorite TV and got this fancy. It's all false, brother. It's not true. Among the lovers of gossip, some are actuated by curiosity, others by jealousy, many by hatred against those through whom God has spoken to reprove them. All these discordant elements are at work. Some conceal their real sentiments, while others are eager to publish all they know or even suspect of evil against another. I saw that the very spirit of perjury that would turn truth into falsehood, good into evil, innocence into crime, is now active. Satan exults over the condition of God's professed people. So here we have to say that this kind of work, this kind of presentation that UPA put out, falls under this warning. It's perjury. It's not right. If you publish the original shepherd's rod, then you are qualified to accept tithes. Now here we go. This is that main area that we need to focus. Symbolic Code Volume 8, number 112, page 23. The message invests no one with authority to solicit financial help to carry on either their work or what? Or that of the shepherd's rod. Do we see that, brethren? This is powerful. Nobody has the authority to get financial help which of course would be tithes and so forth, to carry on their work or that of the rod. So where is this idea that if you publish the pure rod, you're entitled to receive tithe? And I'm sure that these brethren that are being snagged with this false teaching are publishing their own rod at their homes or whatever, and the brethren they're working with obviously are appreciative of it, and they're going to be saying they'd like to return tithes to that brother. What is he going to do? No, I can't take your tithes. No, don't give it to me. I doubt it, brethren. This is enticing brethren to do thievery in the Lord's storehouse, and also to go contrary to the message that they're publishing, right? They're publishing these tracts and all these literatures, and what does it say in the published writings? It says, don't do this. Don't pocket the tithes. Don't, solicit for tithe or money for the work. Okay, so the next quote is, angels keep a faithful record of every man's work, and as judgment passes upon the house of God, the sentence of each is recorded by his name. And the angel is commissioned to spare who? Not the unfaithful servants. And if you read that area of this reference, brethren, it's strictly about tithes. It's talking about money returned to the storehouse. But to cut them down at the time of slaughter. And that which was committed to their trust, their money and so forth, and whatever possession they had, is taken from them. So these are two powerful references that show that no matter what and how good of intentions you have, don't be deceived. You cannot accept tithes. That's not God's plan. All right, so let's go into volume 7, page 140. And Brother Edstrom and UPA go into this as pretty much one of their go-to references to justify all these different storehouses and around the world that are allowed to take tithes. And in a large degree, through our publishing houses, is to be accomplished the work of that other angel who comes down from heaven with great power, who lightens the earth with his glory. Okay, first of all, if you read it in context, again, we can't take a paragraph or a sentence and take it out of the train of thought that is called the context. If you read the context there, she's talking about the Review and Herald and all the different publishing houses that she had. And the publishing work has continued from that time down today. Mountaindale has a publishing press, Waco has a publishing press, and they're putting out much tracts, much things. For instance, let me give you an example. We, at our office here, continue to put out what's called Present Truth packages. And we always, and I underline always, receive just what we need. We ask for chart booklets, we ask for tracts, we ask for anything along TGs, whatever we need along the lines of literature. And faithfulness is the hallmark of Waco and Mountaindale. Now, one of the things that we do is we return our tithes to them. Well, they see it's a win-win situation. I help them, and when it's time for me to get help, I get help. I get my necessary materials to send out in our Facebook group, which is very large. We've just, cleared, I think, 2,200 members around the world, and we're teaching the Present Truth message. And one of the often published posts that we do on that site is we say, anybody that needs a Present Truth package, just let us know. No charge. We will send it out free. And that includes CDs, DVDs, all the tracks, all the TGs, all there's a small booklet now that Waco puts out, beautiful, has many of the charts and, answers, all these things will come in a big package. And we can't tell you how many times we've received thank yous and really great testimony that they've used that material to bring others into the message. So this idea that UPA is painting, that only them are putting out the message, is false. Okay? there is lots of work that he's either ignoring or purposely trying to trick us into understanding that there's nothing being done. Okay? There is a lot being done right now. And these two organizations are growing. We talked to Brother Rene, who holds the Spanish end of Mountaindale and does lots of meetings and work in the Spanish field. And Waco as well. It's got lots of things going. So there's so much work being done, brethren, that it's really a wonder to see all the things happening. All right, so let's get down to UPA's real reason why they teach what they teach. And that is that they feel that the literature particularly and greedy dog ministers and so forth, they're preaching that Mountaindale, Waco are doing so much wrong against the Lord. So it's our job to police them. Our job to say, you know what? I've had it with you. You guys aren't doing what I want done and doing the right thing. You're doing some new code stuff and all these things. I'm had it with you. I'm going to leave you. It's my job to say you're not doing the right thing. Well, look at here. This is what the Lord's word says, not UPA. Let's read it. Is it my duty to set right the Lord's treasury? Question number 98. This is found in Answer, Volume 4, page 46 and 47. Should we pay our tithes to the storehouse if we know that it's not used rightly? Answer. Knowing that our tithe belongs to God's storehouse, notice it says God's storehouse. It doesn't say, God's many storehouses or independent storehouses. It's very specific. God's storehouse. Our greatest burden should be to see that it's faithfully paid there. Nowhere in the Bible do we find that the Lord has laid upon any tithe payer the policing of the channels through which these funds pass. The Lord's treasury is under his control, and if he himself should not see fit to correct an abuse in handling of his money, certainly we could not correct it, however hard we try. If we guard carefully that part of his work which he entrusts to us, our only concern would be to find out where his storehouse is and then faithfully deposit his money there. He has not made us responsible for its use. That he will personally take over, even as he now taking the reins in his own hands. So we see that this is so powerful in so many levels, brethren. He's not made us responsible for the errors that we send the money to of that organization. So if that organization is doing something wrong, okay, let's say that that organization is not treating the poor very well. Is that going to mean anything to us? No. We're paying our part so the Lord, even though that is a wrong being done, the Lord holds us guiltless. But you see, he's going to deal with the leaders, those that are in charge. And they should know better. They should do better control and financing and accountability of the funds coming in, maybe. I do want to say that, unfortunately, because of UPA 7 and others like them that are teaching, the tithes have, over the last few years, been less than what is really needed. Okay, I've heard this from at least 2 or 3 brethren that are in the top leadership positions. Okay, and so it's unfortunate. You've got people out there saying, don't return it. Don't do this. They're so bad, blah, blah, blah. And that's hurt them to a certain degree. And they're not receiving the tithes like they should. Therefore, some issues haven't been addressed. And so this is very sad, brethren, that this has to be dealt with, And, okay, let's go further. Okay, this is continuing of that same reference. When the promised land was divided among the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Levi received no land for an inheritance, as did the 11 tribes. Instead, the Lord decreed that the tithes of the other tribes were to go to Levites. This was their inheritance. It was actually their own. And just as they, as the tithe receivers, had no right to dictate to the others, the tithe payers, what to do with their own increase after it had been tithed, so the tithe payers have no right to dictate to the tithe receivers what to do with the tithe. Each tribe was itself to be accountable to the Lord for that which he has been entrusted to. Thus it must be today. Beautiful, brethren. When you have a business, you have a job, an income, the Lord's watching closely. What are you doing? Forget about the other guy. Look in the mirror. Okay? Check yourself and see what are you doing. When the day comes, the Lord's not going to look there and say, "Oh, great excuse. Yeah, you're right. They messed up over there. I see what you did. You kept the tithes. You did this and that because of their errors." No, brethren. That's not going to happen. He's going to watch and see what you did according to what he said. And we've already went over what he said. And again, I want to repeat, this issue of finding the storehouse is a very serious issue and can be found if you'll take serious study. And, like I said, we've had a lot of videos that will help along this line, but we'll go into more of that as we continue here. All right, so let's look at a summary of part 1 and 2. God has given us a roadmap on how to locate the headquarters, and that's Ezekiel 47 river prophecy. So we found in part 1, and even UPA 7 admits that the river of Ezekiel 47 is a good roadmap to know where the storehouse is. Okay, so as the work progresses, and we showed that in part 1, you'll remember the map. We showed that it started out in Arlington, went to Waco, and then that's of course where the message was made in literature and so forth from there. And then we had the knockout blow, which temporarily caused us to regroup back in California. And then we continued, we didn't stay there. We continued to go eastward. So it was found from the studies that the eastward course was the way to go, and they knew that Salem, Brother Hadif had made mention that Salem someday would be the Storehouse. He made some reference to, I don't have it handy. I wish I would have been able to locate that, but it did he did make a reference to that. It's on a private letter or something. And so they found that. They did a lot of studies and said, let's go to Salem. So they went to Salem, regrouped there, stayed there for several years, and Brother Don, unfortunately, started bringing in false salvational doctrine. It's one thing to bring in false doctrine, it's another to bring in false salvational doctrine. Okay, and so he brought that in. Many of the members rebelled and said, we can't have this. This is against what the Lord's message says, and had to do with 144,000. So they regrouped, continued eastward, landed in Mountaindale, New York, and that's where they are today. And so you can't get any more east than Mountaindale, New York. Now, that's why we say number 1 is very important to know the location. Number 2, UPA 7 correctly points out the importance of this prophecy, yet ignores it for the justification of it being God's storehouse, able to accept tithes. Number 3, being independent for God's work is not according to our history, nor the shepherd's rod message. We've shown that it's so true that organization has always been part of God's corporate work. Private homes and individuals are worthy to accept tithes and pocket their tithes as long as they publish the original rod. And this is directly going against the word and the counsel of the Lord's rod. Okay, so we have to remember that that is the big false teaching coming from UPA 7, is this tithe issue. Number 5, sending tithes to organizations such as Mountaindale, Waco is wrong and only supporting greedy ministers. So that's what they teach, but this has no basis in fact. So those are the 5 points that we've discussed and went over, and we hope we've made it more clear for you under these 2 presentations. And let's close with the following. All right, so where are we at here on this whole thing? Well, God is calling people to be great heroes. Let's read this. If it is hard enough for the average mind to admit that he is wrong, Then pray tell me, how easily will our wise men, who think themselves to stand without peer, to admit their mistakes? For this is exactly what they must do to their audiences if they themselves are ever to accept the prophecies when unfolded by the Holy Spirit himself. And if they do not give up their private interpretations and take the interpretations of the Spirit, will they not sin against the Holy Ghost? Um, okay, brethren, I think I forgot to add more to this, so let me read it. The wise men of Chaldea and Egypt were not allowed to advance their private ideas as to what the king's visions might mean. So at last it was an easy matter for them to say, "We do not know." But it was not at all easy for the priests, the scribes, the Pharisees in Christ's day to recant what they had taught the people. And neither will it be easy for private interpreters of today, even though they know that such an honest and trying confession would make them great heroes. This is what the Lord is saying. Do we want to become a great hero? No, you're not going to be looked at as a pathetic or a false teacher that is just should be ashamed of himself. No, God says you're a great hero for standing up and saying, "Yeah, I was wrong. Forgive me, brethren. I've taught wrong, and this is something I need to clear up because the great and dreadful day of the Lord is at hand." Okay, brethren, so thank you so much for listening. And we do this in the spirit of love. We don't want to condemn anybody. It's not our job to condemn UPA 7 or the workers. And we just want to bring this to your attention so that you can do the right thing. Pray about it, fast about it, and I'm sure John 16:13 will be your guide. Amen.